This is even better than we thought, as the New York Rangers have received good news on the injury front. We're going to break that down, as well as last night. The New York Rangers' highest paid players finally came to play, and we're going to highlight one player that I believe might be their best player this season, and who that player is might shock Rangers fans. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you who watch our videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and you get to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. And that's right, we're going to start on the injury front, and we'll get into, obviously, Mika Zibanejad, Kreider Miller, and one other player I want to highlight that I think has been one of their best players so far this season and really flown under the radar. But first, we're going to get into some injury updates, and that starts with, obviously, Filip. He left the game last week with a upper body injury, and a lot of people were speculating, is it a concussion again? He's dealt with concussion issues in the past, and this is from the Athletic's Arthur Staple, and he says Filip is still day-to-day, but according to a league source, he saw a specialist and was found to not have a concussion. He will join the New York Rangers in the middle of their road trip in Calgary tomorrow. Now, we did have some other insight from Colin Stevenson, who does some fantastic work as well. Great follow. And according to a source, again, Filip saw a specialist, but he is joining the Rangers in Calgary, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he will be playing against the Calgary Flames. So he may miss some time yet, but he does not have a concussion. He is not dealing with a concussion. It sounds like he should be back in the lineup soon. Maybe not tomorrow night against Calgary, but he should be back in the lineup soon. And this is great news for the New York Rangers. Filip has objectively been their best player this season, all over the ice. 5-on-5, defensively, offensively. He's been driving one of the best lines in hockey, which is the Rangers' third line when everyone is healthy. So he's been fantastic, and he's really flown under the radar and really gelled well with another player we'll get to later in the video that I really want to highlight, and I've talked a little bit about. But yeah, Filip, this is great news. He should be back in the lineup pretty soon, which is great news for himself and Rangers fans. You never want to see a guy go down with injury, but especially a guy with concussion, history as well, concussion problems. So really, really good news. And before we move on to last night's game, I just wanted to highlight Filip this season. In 15 games played so far this season, he has 9 points. He scored 4 goals. He's been one of their best players all over the ice, like I mentioned, and in very little time. He's only averaging 13 minutes a night this season. He doesn't really play in any special teams, or he doesn't really play in all situations, so he's making the most of his time. And if you look at Money Puck as well, I mean, he is putting together a great season. That third line with him centering it when they are playing together, one of the best in hockey. It has been fantastic. So hopefully he gets back soon so they can continue to do their thing. But let's get into last night's game against the Vancouver Canucks. This was one of the best games in a while. This was one of the games that you can look at and feel good about that you won, right? Obviously, you beat the San Jose Sharks, and you want to feel good about that and build off of that, but it's the San Jose Sharks at the end of the day. You still take positives from it, but this was a win where you go, okay, they played well, the top players played well, and you love to see it. And Mika Zibanejad, I got to give him some, a shout out in this regard for last night's game, because he was flying last night and he looked pretty good defensively as well. Like, he looked really engaged. Like, this is what we've been asking for. He looked engaged and like he really cared about the result of this game. And I'm not saying that he doesn't care about the result of every single game. I'm sure that he does, but he put in an effort last night, especially early on in the game, that you can be proud of a fan, as a fan, I should say. Sorry, but Mika was flying around early, doing his thing in the O zone, dishing nice passes. He was making really nice plays last night, I thought, and obviously connecting with Riley Smith as well. And he was playing great. He created one goal himself with a turnover. I mean, like, he completely created that play in the neutral zone himself. So I have to give him credit where credit is due. Mika Zibanejad was great last night. So love to see that. And obviously assisted on his goal, Kreider Miller. So both of them getting on the board. Love to see that. We'll get to them in a second, and some of the defensemen in a second as well, and some reaction from fans, because it is quite funny after last night's game. But the guy I want to highlight in this video is Cuylle. I think he's been fantastic so far this season. He's been one of their best players, again, 5-on-5. I love his speed. I love the physicality, everything that he brings. This has been a great player. He has a very underrated release as well. The goal on the breakaway last night, I mean, Shilov's had no chance. Like, that was just a rocket of a shot, and he, fantastic accuracy on that as well. And Will Cooley's 2-point effort tonight so far has him tied with Artemi Panarin for the most 5-on-5 points on the Rangers this season at 13. So obviously Panarin's having a fantastic season and blowing everyone out of the water in terms of point production. If you look at that just on the the stat sheet, but you have to factor in the fact that Will Cooley doesn't really get too much time on the power play. Obviously, Filipito, like I mentioned too, another guy, the same thing. Like, they're making the most out of their 5-on-5 minutes, which isn't much, right? So he's been great so far this season. We can look into his stats as well. 14 points in 17 games. I mean, this guy is almost a point a game player, averaging just under 14 minutes a night this season. He is still only 22. He's only going to be 23. So this was, first of all, a great pickup, great draft pick. And, he's developed quite nicely into, he's not necessarily a top line player, but I think he can play on the second line, and he's been playing great in his role. I'm not saying move him or anything. I think he's been playing great in his role, so continue to have him there. But he has been a bright spot, and I don't really look into plus minus too much, but the fact that he plays a lot of his time 5-on-5 and he's plus 14, that says something to me. He has been fantastic so far this season. So just wanted to shout out Will Cooley. He's been fantastic so far this season. And speaking of that third line, obviously they were missing Filipito last night and the last couple of games. But Capo Caco is also up to 11 points in 17 games so far this season. So quietly putting together a pretty good season. Obviously, you would expect way more out of this player, based on where he was drafted in the last couple seasons. But he looks like he's having fun playing hockey again. So I wouldn't really touch that third line. They're rolling right now. Continue to do the things that they're doing. They are, them and the goaltending, the third line are really propping the Rangers up right now. Is that sustainable? We've talked about it in the past. Maybe not. The top guys got to get going. But last night, the top guys did get going. You get a little bit of depth scoring as well from your third line, like they continue to do. This looks like a dangerous team when everything is clicking that way. So love to see that for the New York Rangers. Capo Caco has been pretty good as well. Quietly putting together a decent season. I just think that the expectations are much higher, but you know what? He's been pretty good. Now, I did want to highlight one thing that is a problem that they have to look into, that the Rangers have played 17 games so far this season, and in 8 of those games, they've allowed 8 goals in the first 4 minutes of a game this season. 8 goals in the first 4 minutes. So you're going down early often. They got to fix that. That's not great. You got to score first. You have to try and score first and early. You cannot be chasing the game all the time. This is not a sustainable way to play, and we've been talking about it. They've been picking up wins. Like, if you look at the Metro, and in terms of games played too, they have a lot of games in hand. So they're in a very good spot right now, despite the unsustainable type of hockey that they're playing. It's going to catch up to them if they do not fix these things. So I wanted to highlight that as well. And if you look at the score impact charts, last thing I'll mention here before we wrap it up, obviously Jacob Trouba and Ryan Lindgren at the bottom. Not a great game for them. A lot of mistakes, and Rangers fans tend to believe that they should probably be in the press box for a little bit, or up in a box at MSG taking a night off. So I wonder if Peter Laviolette gives one of the younger guys a shot over one of them, but we'll see what happens. I do think that the Rangers, NHL experience goes a long way, and sometimes you don't have the best night, and somebody's got to be at the bottom of these charts some nights. But again, there was a lot of mistakes, and their defensive game, their team defense was not great last night. So I wonder if Laviolette, I don't think he will, but I wonder if he does take a look at it for some younger talent like Victor Mancini, let's say, for example. So let me know in the comments what you think of, obviously, Will Cooley's season. The Filipino news looks like he'll be back. That's great news for Rangers fans. And the defense, would you put Victor Mancini back in? I think it's worth a shot. I think he should get some more action, but we'll see what Peter Laviolette has up his sleeve. And if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.